Hi everyone and welcome to There's No Such Thing as Normal, a podcast about neurodiversity, disability and mental health. I'm Lou, your host, and I'm neurodivergent myself, and I'm also completely blind. Now I'm really excited because I have got a special guest on the show. I have got the amazing Gabi.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Do you want to introduce yourself and say a bit about you?
Yeah, I'm a teaching assistant. I work with Lou, but my background isn't in education. I actually graduated with a first-class honours degree in biology with a year in Europe in 2010 and a degree in dentistry from Barts and the Royal London in 2014. I went on to work in community dentistry in East London and Brighton, where I did NHS dentistry, treating patients with all kinds of disabilities, doing home visits and the homeless community and all sorts of that sort of stuff. But my main loves are playing music and playing guitar and singing in my band.
That's really cool. Sounds like you've got up to a lot of studying by the sounds of it.
Yeah, a lot of studying.
Yeah, very interesting background there. But we are going to talk about functional neurological disorder or FND because Gabi has that condition. But I wanted to interview her because, well, she's awesome, amazing and lovely. But this podcast is all about raising awareness and sharing stories and just hopefully helping people. And by doing this podcast, I hope to raise awareness of FND because it's often poorly understood. And hopefully people can listen to this and learn more about the condition to support others. Or if you've got FND yourself, you might relate to it. So yeah, we're sort of just gonna, go for it really and just
absolutely.
chat.
I mean, I really agree. I think that raising awareness is really important because FND kind of sometimes feels like the most common neurological disorder that no one's ever heard of. You know, it's very difficult to know its actual prevalence because of the difficulties in diagnosing it. But FND Hope says that there could be, there is one report that found that 1 out of every 3 visits to a neurologist turned out to be functional neurological disorder.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That is quite a shock.
It's obviously only one report, and it's hard to know the prevalence. But, it can have quite debilitating symptoms that are quite similar to more well-known conditions like MS and epilepsy, but it's sometimes not taken seriously.
Wow, that is quite a staggering figure.
Yeah. And it can't be seen so easily on sort of common scans or tests like MRI and blood tests. And so historically, patients with FND were sometimes treated quite poorly by the medical community and seemed to be sort of making their symptoms up, which was really damaging, obviously.
Definitely.
So yeah, really important to raise that awareness so that people can know that it's, a difficult thing to deal with.
Yeah, it's a real thing and it has a real impact basically on people's lives. But I think it'd be a good place to start if you could maybe explain in your own words what FND is, just so that people can understand a bit more about what it is.
Yeah, I mean, my neurologist explained it to me like a computer with a programming issue. So if you took an X-ray of a computer with a virus or something like that, then the hardware will look fine, even though the computer itself is not working properly if it's got a programming issue. And the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke states that FND is a neurological condition caused by changes in how brain networks work rather than changes to the structure of the brain itself.
Right, that's a really good description. I love the analogy there. That's really does help to explain it. So it's not a problem with the way the brain is or the structure or the connections, and it's, I guess, again, it's something like epilepsy. You can often you can see it on electroencephalograms where they measure the activity, but they can't, and I guess that probably makes it a lot harder to diagnose. But what would you say, what are some of the symptoms of FND and how can it affect people? Because of course everyone's different. But
absolutely. I mean, there's so many symptoms, but you can get sort of seizure-like episodes, you can get movement problems like hand tremors, a dysfunctional walk, limb weakness, muscle spasms. You can get problems with cognitive function and dizziness, speech difficulties like a sudden onset of stuttering or trouble speaking. You can get problems with vision or hearing. You can get pain. You can get extreme slowness and fatigue, and also numbness or sort of pins and needles. Amongst, I'm sure other people have got other things, but yeah, those are kind of the main categories of all the wide variety of symptoms that you can actually get.
That is a lot of different symptoms and also a lot of body systems involved there. And I imagine that does make getting a diagnosis even more difficult, because it's not like, oh, well, it's this and this and this.
Absolutely.
It's like 100 different things, and everyone's going to have their own combo. So
Yeah.
it's like picking it apart, let alone ruling out other conditions as well. So that sounds like it can be quite challenging.
Yeah, you sort of sometimes end up getting sort of sent from pillar to post to different specialists because it sort of feels like they don't know what to do with you.
That must be really frustrating.
Yeah.
Are there any sort of misconceptions or myths that surrounding FND? Any assumptions that people make? Anything you want people to know? Let's do some myth busting.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the main myth really is that, these are real symptoms. People are not making them up. It is not for attention. It is life altering and very difficult to come to terms with yourself, like as the person that has it. And so then it's sort of extra difficult if the people around you are doubting or unsupportive in some way. Because what sort of attention is that? Do you know what I mean? Like, why would somebody make it up? It absolutely doesn't.
It doesn't make any
Doesn't make any
sense.
sense.
Why?
It doesn't make any sense at all.
I mean, someone would have to either have a very good sort of,
budding acting career.
Yeah, that's what I say. Like acting skills. It's like, what? Why would you do that? You'd have to
Yeah.
like research it and like.
That's the thing. I've never heard of it.
You
I've
can't
never heard
make
of
it up.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is invisible disabilities are invisible. You can't see them.
Yeah.
And just because you can't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, really important. That's a great one. Is there anything else you think that you'd like people to know?
Well, I mean, I think that's the main thing, really. It's difficult because it falls in this kind of no man's land between sort of psychiatry and neurology. And you end up sort of, I've been referred to like neuropsychiatry, that is quite a new and sort of not so well understood field.
Like a mixture of neurology and
Yeah,
psychology. That's
yeah.
quite fascinating.
It's sort of the physiology that, or even like the emotions that then end up with physical responses. But we don't know. We don't really know the cause of it. That's the really difficult thing. For some people, they really feel that trauma is what set theirs off. Some people have like a surgery or something and then it sets it off. There's all sorts of, we don't really know what actually causes it and perpetuates the symptoms over time.
No, it's bizarre. I mean, it does make you wonder, something must happen to cause this kind of system
meltdown, it feels
yeah,
like sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Some sort of system
problem with
communication going on. Something must. But hopefully, more research and they'll come up with something.
I'm very hopeful for that.
Well, I think it'd be great to talk a bit about your own journey, really, and how it all looked for you. So when did it all start? How did it happen?
Yeah.
What were your initial symptoms?
I mean, it's quite a good question that's sort of difficult to answer because I had viral encephalitis when I was in my early 20s, where I had a massive seizure and I ended up in intensive care.
And encephalitis is a brain infection.
Yes, well, it's like, viral infection causes a swelling of
inflammation
the encephalate, that layer in the brain. And I also had a series of sort of mystery facial swellings in my late 20s that we never really worked out what was going on there. And then I had this sort of strange feeling of being a bit spaced out and not very present on and off in my early 30s. I had an MRI and an EEG when they found nothing of note. And so then it all really kicked off in July 2021, where I collapsed at work. I was just waiting in one of the clinics, waiting for one of my patients to come in. And then suddenly I found myself on the dental chair and they tipped it upside down to try and get the sort of blood back to my head.
They thought you sort of fainted.
Yeah,
then.
They thought that it was just sort of a faint. I didn't actually lose consciousness, but I certainly felt very, very strange. And then I went home and then I could barely move for like 2 weeks. I could hardly even get out of bed. I just had this very, very deep fatigue and sort of paresthesia, so like tingling in my limbs, in my arms and my legs, and some joint and some muscle pain. And so then the GP did a neurology referral. I started to get a little bit of energy back, was able to move around again. But then a month later, I developed this strange sort of wobbly walk. And so the way that I walked, I'd lift my knee up and plonk my foot straight down on the floor. It was like my ankle had sort of forgotten that rolling movement that to make a smooth walk. So I had this sort of juddery, odd walk. And, you know, when you think, well, how do you walk? You're like, I don't know. You
You
don't
just do
think
it.
about it. You just do it, you
Yeah.
know? So that was very strange. And so the GP expedited the referral to the neurologist. I was seen by a neurologist in August. So it was very quick for me. Most people, it's not. But then he diagnosed me with FND and gave me a post-it note with 2 websites on it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
As if to say,
yeah.
read these websites.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Sounds about right, to be honest.
I know. And then referred me to physio, and that was kind of it for a while. Then 6 months later, I developed some tics in my arms, on my leg, on my neck, and functional seizures. And so, yeah, and a year after that, then I had this sort of strange, dissociative, spaced out brain fog feeling that settled in with double vision as well. So that's kind of the full remit of the things that happen for me anyway. Obviously, it's different for everybody.
Yeah, so it sort of sounds like there were maybe some factors that could have contributed to it.
Yeah.
So I wonder if the encephalitis that you had could have potentially
I do wonder that
caused
as well.
something. Who knows? I mean, it seems like that would have caused, it's brain related, neurological related.
Yeah.
And then those swellings, maybe that was like something related. I mean, you
Who knows?
just don't know.
I mean, the swellings themselves, they basically said, oh, you're stressed.
Really? I mean, I've never really heard of swelling face to be
Stress
stressed.
swelling.
I feel like doctors like to blame everything on stress.
Yes, but I also think that stress actually is chronic stress is actually quite damaging.
Oh yes,
isn't it?
absolutely. And I would never
Yeah.
deny that. But, they've got to look beyond the stress. And even if the stress has caused a condition, then that condition is there. You can't just say, oh, it's stress. It's like, yeah, you might have a condition that could have been brought on by stress, but then you've got stress plus the condition. It's not just that on its own.
And then you get stressed out about the condition.
Yeah, and then it's just like a loopy loop.
A terrible, terrible loop.
And you're just stuck looping around forever. Yeah. Goodness me, yeah, it's quite a lot to come to terms with all of that, really, if you're unsure. But then it sort of sounds like it was quite sudden, and then it sort of plateaued off a little bit, and then all these other things sort of came about. So it was almost like it sort of hit a peak, and then
it kind of did. It sort of hit a peak and then sort of plateaued down, and like I still do get quite a few of those symptoms now, but I don't get them as regularly as I used to, so that's something.
I mean, which symptom would you say is the most impactful on your life?
Do you know what? It's actually the brain fog. Like, I could cope with the wobbly walk, the tics, the seizures, all of that stuff because it passes, it comes
away.
and goes. Whereas the feeling of being sort of a bit spaced out and a bit removed
It's
from
horrible.
reality is there constantly.
Sort of dissociated sort of
Yeah.
feeling. Yeah.
And so that, I have to say, actually is my key. The one, if you said you could wipe out one symptom, that is the one. That is the one.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand why, because the others go away and that doesn't, and you're then stuck with that permanent feeling. And I mean, brain fog is horrible, really, really horrible. Could you maybe explain a little bit about what a functional seizure is, and maybe how that's slightly different from an epileptic seizure?
Yeah, absolutely. So in an epileptic seizure, when they do an EEG, they can see the sort of electrical, like the brain waves or whatever, they can see the activity in the brain is all misfiring and is all going wrong. Whereas in a functional seizure, the patient has symptoms and they can range, quite widely. Some people have very sort of classic, like an epileptic seizure, tonic-clonic sort of seizure where they get muscle spasms and these sorts of things. Whereas some people, like me, can just look like they're asleep. Like I just look like I'm completely asleep. I do sometimes get some tics during the seizures. But yeah, and one of the big differences is that epileptic seizures normally last between 3 and 5 minutes, whereas functional seizures can actually last. I mean, some people get them for hours.
That must be exhausting.
Which is pretty awful.
Goodness.
Yeah, I'm quite lucky. My longest one has maybe been about 30 minutes, 45 minutes.
I mean, that's still a long time.
Which is a long time because you're awake the whole time. Well, I am anyway. But I can only speak to my own experience.
You're aware
Yeah.
that you can't speak really during them?
No, I can't really respond or speak. It's like everything's just kind of gone offline. Yeah, very weird.
Because I was around when you had one, and you couldn't really speak, but you were sort of able to say, what was it, a few words, the odd sort of word here and there.
I
but
can
you were very
sometimes
sort of slow.
hum, or like sort of like or like, I can't really articulate things, but
No,
yeah, it's
you
very
can't.
weird.
Yeah,
It
but
feels very weird.
you're aware, and
Yes.
so you're people have got to be mindful of that, haven't they? That
Yeah.
you're able to hear what they're saying, and
Yeah. Don't talk about me like I'm not there,
yeah,
please.
yeah, good bit of advice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I I know that it's affected you a lot. I mean, it would affect anyone a lot. But how would you say developing FND affected your life? I mean, your well being, mental health, and work, social life. I mean, everything. I imagine
Yeah,
it's had a big
I mean,
impact.
it was a very big change. I mean, I had to be dismissed on ill health from dentistry, which was quite upsetting. I'd been, I'd studied for a long time to get there, and I really did enjoy the
Mm.
job. And then even things that I, did as hobbies became more difficult, like playing music or singing was a bit of a struggle. I even got sort of asked to leave a band because they sort of felt that I was too disabled and that I
Oh, it's
shouldn't be doing the
horrible.
gigs. Well, I'm sure they had their reasons, but because it did set off all of the symptoms
Yeah.
after the gigs, it would really set off the symptoms, and I'd often have a seizure or a lot of tics afterwards.
Maybe they were just worried for you, but still,
It's yeah,
you just feel
it's
rejected, don't you? And then you feel
yes,
like, well, where do I fit in? It's really,
absolutely,
really
yeah.
hard.
And then the socializing is sometimes also, well, it was quite a bit more difficult because of the brain fog. And so following conversations, if people are all having conversations all at the same time all around you, then it can be quite difficult to follow, and then that sort of takes a toll on your mental health because it can feel quite isolating.
Yeah.
And when all your scans and stuff are coming back as normal, you start to think like, am I going mad?
Mm.
For want of a better term, obviously. But you know what I mean? You do start to really question yourself.
And I wonder if with the whole socializing thing, if the brain fog is making it hard to, concentrate on what the other person's saying, think of words, articulate, and then you're having to focus so much harder. I
Yeah.
imagine that probably just makes the brain fog worse because you're then using so much energy.
Yeah, it can do sometimes. Yeah. And then you think, oh, I'm just going to chill out and just going to watch TV. And then you just end up, you're like, I'm not actually watching this program at all. I'm just staring at the TV whilst this is on.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is.
No, I totally get what you mean. And I guess with the whole dentistry, I guess when you study for something, well, not your whole life, but for a long time,
Yeah,
and that's
big
what
old
you want
chunk
to
of time.
do. It's like,
Yeah.
almost feels like when that's cut off, you just think, oh my God, I've spent so much of my life doing this. Now what? Then you just don't know what to do with yourself,
No,
do you?
absolutely. I mean, it's, when it becomes part of your identity, it's quite difficult to sort of then get around that, because then, yeah, you're absolutely right. You feel a bit like, well, who am I? What do I do? What am I doing here? Like,
Yeah.
which is quite a challenge. Yeah.
I guess you got to, yeah, find yourself again and
Yes.
find what you can do with what you've
Yes.
got and what
Absolutely
works
right.
around your condition. Whereas, life might look different, but it's
Doesn't
finding your new
necessarily
normal, I
mean that
suppose.
it's bad.
No.
But it is different. You're absolutely right. It is different to before.
Yeah, it's finding your new,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
life,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, absolutely.
But you've mentioned that things have sort of improved. Obviously, by the sounds of it, you had a really bad patch, and then
Yeah.
things have improved. But yeah, how's it sort of changed over time? Have your triggers changed? I mean, I haven't really asked you much about that in terms of triggers. What sets it off? But what would you say about all of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say that the triggers have been fairly consistent in that heat and cold seem to be real triggers for me.
Extreme temperatures.
Yeah, they seem to be things. And also physical exercise. So if I run around, or if I play a very strenuous gig or something like that, then that can really set the symptoms off. And that's kind of been the same since the beginning. But what has changed is that they've all reduced apart from the brain fog.
Yeah.
So I used to have the wobbly legs all the time, constantly, but now I only have them about once or twice a week.
Okay.
And then I used to have the functional seizures like every few days or even every day. But now I normally have them maybe like once or twice a month. At the moment, because it's
That's
very hot, I've had a
amazing.
few more.
Yeah.
But the heat really doesn't help. But at one point though, the tics were so frequent that I struggled to like cook or feed myself.
Oh, wow.
It was really, you felt very out of control of your own
Gosh.
body.
Yeah, must be an awful feeling.
It's quite scary, yeah. But now, I get a few every few days, maybe, the tics. So it's all on an upward, more positive trend,
That's amazing. I'm really pleased to hear. I mean, do you think there's anything that has improved your situation? You've mentioned to me in the past you've tried lots of different things. What sort of things have you tried? I mean, do you think anything has helped, or do you think it's just
honestly
time?
Don't know. I feel like there hasn't been any one thing that I've gone, oh, I've tried
maybe
this
it's
thing and it's
everything.
magically, maybe. I mean, I've tried rest, I've tried exercise, I've tried changing my diet, physiotherapy, acupuncture, went to an osteopath, I've tried all sorts of vitamins, I tried CBD oil, I tried EMDR therapy. That was at a non-epileptic attack disorder seizure clinic. So that it was interesting, but again, all of these things, they didn't actually make a sudden difference.
No.
Oh, do you know what? Actually, the only thing that did make a very big, sudden and surprising difference was I went to my GP to ask about amantadine, which is a medication that I think it's a Parkinson's medication, but they give it off license to people with MS for fatigue.
Oh.
And my housemate at the time had fatigue and MS, and had started on this amantadine and was like, "Oh my goodness, this is life changing. Like, Gabi, maybe you should give it a go."
Right.
So I went to the GP, and I've been very lucky that I've had quite a nice and understanding doctor. And he said, "Yeah, let's give it a try. We're doing it off license, but let's give it a go."
A lot of doctors probably wouldn't do that, would they?
Yeah, no, probably not. But I guess because it's a sort of a neural signaling pathway, they think, oh, is there,
Makes sense.
neurotransmitters and that sort of thing? Will it help? So gave it a try, and I went from being so fatigued that I could not get out of bed until like 2:00 in the afternoon, after having gone to bed at like 9:00 at night, to suddenly being able to get up at 9 in the morning.
Wow.
Which was really incredible.
That's amazing. And it worked straight away, just like that.
Yeah, literally 2 or 3 days I was taking it, and it suddenly made this huge difference. Now, I don't know if that's a placebo effect or if it was genuinely doing something.
Oh my goodness. I mean, who knows?
Who
but
knows?
It sounds like quite a tremendous improvement.
Oh, it was
and
life-changing.
Are you still taking it now?
No, actually. So I went back to the GP because it got to a point where I was like, is this really doing anything? Maybe there are some side effects that I'm not so keen on. So I suggested that we tried sort of tapering it down. So we did that together, and it's almost like it did a little reset, because I've still been able to retain the benefits of having taken it for a few months, but I don't take it anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So obviously I'm sure I haven't got a clue. I'm just wondering now. But maybe it did something to your brain.
Who knows, honestly.
A reset. I mean, I can't help wondering. I wonder if you went back on it, then you'd get even.
I wonder.
Better. Who knows?
I wonder. It's a good
I've got
point.
no idea.
Yeah. But yeah, that was certainly something that was very interesting. I also did a medical trial at King's College where they actually do fMRIs. Now, this is a normal MRI takes obviously a very detailed scan of the structure in your body, but it doesn't show the function. Whereas a functional MRI measures small changes in blood flow that occur with brain activity.
Interesting.
So it can kind of see where your brain is kind of going, woo, yeah, something's happening over here,
Right.
And so it measures, it changes, these small changes in blood flow. And so they've actually found, and they've done studies with people with FND that show that these fMRIs do show that there's something different happening in a person with FND as a person without it. So they're not readily available on the NHS though. And so this is why they're not really used as like a diagnostic feature.
But it could help them, I guess, to identify what's going on in the brain, and maybe in the future they'll be able to find out what maybe causes it and move towards some treatments.
And certainly when they do FND studies, fMRIs are very commonly used. But yeah, I did a medical trial that didn't really do make any big difference, but it was for psilocybin, which is of course magic mushrooms.
Yeah.
So it's quite unconventional.
Very cool. What was that like?
It was an experience. It was very fascinating what the brain can do.
Yeah.
You know, like you're there in a room. I'm there with 2 psychologists. They set up this lovely room. It's all sort of calm. They've got lovely calming music on, and and then there was a lot of sort of visual changes. So it sort of went rainbow colors and all sorts of things. But then also just emotion feelings. You know, the feeling of like you're this tiny little speck in the universe.
Yeah.
And isn't that fascinating and amazing?
I've literally had that feeling doing the breath work that I do. It's a whole other story, and I won't go into it because I will be here all day. But the sort of breath work I do, they have actually done, again, sort of special brain scans and all sorts to measure brainwaves. And they've shown that certain breathing exercises do have the same sort of effects as psychedelic substances.
That's fascinating.
And I have done breathing, and I have sat there and gone, God, I am literally just this. Yeah, it's literally what you said. I'm this speck, and what am I? And it feels like your consciousness is spread so thin.
Yeah.
And you're almost like it's almost like looking at the world from like really high up.
Absolutely.
You get this massive perspective that you can't normally. That's what I get doing breath work.
Amazing.
It's really, really, really interesting.
Isn't that amazing what the brain is capable of doing?
We can probably get to that state ourselves. Just it's a whole other subject.
Oh yeah, I mean, you do a whole other podcast.
Very interesting what breath work does.
Yeah,
and one of my special interests.
Yeah, and I also tried the Visible app, which I know you use.
I use that for fatigue and
pacing, which was very
interesting.
It
links onto my next thing, because I was going to ask you what sort of daily routines you do, any tools or strategies that make a difference. So I guess you're sort of saying pacing could be one of them.
I'm still trying to build them, to be honest, because like I was saying before, nothing has made a very tangible instant difference. And so it's hard to sort of stick to something when it feels like it's impossible that it's going to work, because I've got the Curable app, which is sort of healing the body through the mind. It's kind of, that's their focus. And then there's Neurotoned as well, another app which focuses on vagus nerve toning. I do not know the sort of scientific basis for them. I haven't looked into it. It's just one of these things where when you feel so unwell, you just want to try anything. And of course, the algorithm knows that and advertises all of these apps to you.
And then you'll try it because, well, who knows? You just sit there and you think, it might work, I'll try it, and nothing to lose.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I guess you can get in a bit of a spiral with it, can't you? Just trying everything.
Oh, yeah.
And then you probably get a bit disheartened if something doesn't work. Maybe you have expectations and then,
And then on that, I think very important that throughout all of this, I have also had mental health therapy as well, just talking therapy. But, I've had that throughout all of this as well, because it can be very frustrating and difficult to sort of, know where on earth you're going sometimes.
Of course, just having someone to offload to. I mean, I've been in therapy nearly 10 years and it does me the world of good. I don't know where I'd be without it, to be honest. Just having that person you can talk to, they can help you work through your feelings. It's amazing.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I'm sort of trying at the moment very gentle yoga and meditation and the odd sort of breathing exercise as well. So it's really interesting that you brought up that the breathing exercises had a real sort of profound effect when you were doing them as well.
I'm not necessarily talking about box breathing or, more sort of calming breathing. I mean, I am talking about advanced breathwork techniques that I do. So I'm not saying do some chilled breathing and you'll have a psychedelic experience. No. And also I'll point out that I've never in my life taken any psychedelic substances. So I have no comparison here at all. Just to reassure people. No, I say that just from what I've read that they've shown it can be similar. But no, I do certain types of breathing more powerful and they impact the brain. So I'm not talking about breathing, just generally breathing exercises, specific types I do. But it's very interesting. So in terms of sort of your, I don't know, family, friends, people, have they been quite supportive? Have you ever faced people not understanding or sort of judging? Have you ever sort of had problems, trying to explain it to people and them not getting it?
Yeah, I mean, I've been quite lucky generally. My family and friends, I have been very lucky. Everybody's been very supportive and very understanding. But there was one time when I was out, and it was just a bunch of strangers. Like I love heavy metal. You know, I love quite sort of heavy music, and I love to wear big chunky platform shoes. I don't so much now, but at that time, I'd still wear even the very big shoes, even when I had a very wobbly walk, because, you know, you feel like you lose part of your identity when you get this diagnosis. And so there's things that you kind of cling on to, you know. And I once had this sort of older guy very nastily sort of turn around to his friends when I was walking in these big shoes with my walking stick, and I was wobbling. And he said, "Oh, no wonder she can't even walk in those shoes." And then sort of, you know, made all of his friends just like laughed at
Oh my
me,
God, that's horrible.
which is really mean. You know, you just think at the time, you know, when you think like, "Oh, I wish I'd said this."
Yeah.
You
Oh
know,
yeah.
at the time, I wish that I could have said to him, you know, if the disability came off with the shoes, do you really think I'd be wearing them?
Yeah.
You know, but no, at the time, you just feel really embarrassed and really disheartened. You know,
It's horrible. Knocks your confidence
yeah,
and makes you
absolutely.
feel.
And I've had the odd sort of online troll or whatever, but generally, I've been very, very lucky in my support. The main person actually that I've had to challenge is kind of myself.
Yeah, I
you
think we
know?
all do.
Because, you know, coming from quite a scientific background and having worked as a dentist, in my head, it's, you know, patients are ill. I cannot be ill. You know, I am the one that does the healing. I could not possibly be unwell. And so, yeah, I think that I kind of, you want this in quotes, proof. You know, I find it very difficult concept to really truly believe that behavior like yoga, meditation, or whatever these sorts of things can actually help to change and heal the neural networks in the
Yeah.
brain. But, you know, we'd never question something like blushing. You know, that's a physical response. Your cheeks get all hot, you know, that's a physical response to an emotion.
Yeah.
Or an elevated heart rate in response to anxiety. You know, it
I know
does.
all about that.
Yeah, well, you know, it makes sense that there could be long-term physiological changes due to, you know, your thought processes potentially.
Absolutely.
But it's poorly understood, isn't it? So it's
Definitely.
hard to know where to go with it.
Yeah. So how do you think people can be supportive to those with FND? Are there certain things people should say? Are there certain things people shouldn't say? That people should and shouldn't do? Maybe are there any sort of subtle forms of support that make a difference? Maybe even just people's tone of voice, or, you know.
Yeah, it's really interesting question. I mean, I think the main thing is to just believe the person. You know, believe the person and the symptoms that they say they have. You know, if they are having a seizure, then, you know, I don't know, like, so, okay, I gave a talk recently for the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh as an FND patient for some dentistry CPD. So they had a bunch of dentists and they were trying to work out how's best to treat people
And
with
that's
FND.
continuous professional development.
Exactly right, yes. They had this lovely FND specialist there who mentioned a very interesting difference that she had seen between an epileptic, tonic-clonic type seizure and a functional seizure that might look similar. She said in a functional seizure, if you gently touch the limb that is moving the most, the movement will change to a different limb and can sometimes bring people out of the seizure.
Oh.
Whereas in an epileptic seizure, the movement is unaffected and it doesn't bring them out of the seizure.
Wow.
So, you know, obviously there's issues with consent here. If you see somebody having a seizure, don't just go and grab their arm. I think that would also not be a good idea. But I would say if you do see somebody having a seizure, then you don't necessarily need to call an ambulance. If you know them, if you know that they have a condition where they have seizures, make a note of the time. You know, if they're having any involuntary muscle spasms or movements where they might hurt themselves, then make sure that anything around them is moved out of the way. Don't put anything in their mouth. And please don't talk about them like they're not there, because they really may well be able to hear you.
That's some really good advice. I think that's really important. Bit of seizure first aid there. And I think also if obviously if you don't know the person and they're having a seizure, then you have to call an ambulance, because well, you don't know them.
If you don't know them, absolutely right, yes. But
Yeah.
if you know them and you know that they've got a condition, especially if you've spoken to them about it and
Yeah.
they say, please don't, like if I would feel so bad. It would be such a waste of paramedics' time for them to come to me, because I know 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes, I'll be
You'll
back
be fine.
and I'll be all right, you know? But I do think making a note of the time is a good thing to do, because if they've said to you, oh, you know, normally my seizure are about 3 to 5 minutes long, and you notice, oh, this has been going on for 10 minutes, that might be a reason then to consider calling an ambulance.
Definitely. Sort of anything that's outside of what their
Normal is.
yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely right. And I mean, when it, you know, if it comes to somebody that's having a functional seizure and you haven't spoken to them about whether they're okay with you touching their arm, for example, to see whether it would help bring them out of the seizure, I would say don't do it, but just sit with them. You can talk to them even and say, you know, you're safe, everything's okay, I'm here, in just a sort of calm tone of voice, and just wait it out with them.
Staying calm is always a good idea. And I think when people see a seizure, it's completely natural to get a bit panicky, but actually just trying to stay calm is the best thing you can do for yourself, but also the person.
Yeah,
I'd
definitely,
say.
yeah.
Well, let's end on some lovely supportive messages from you. So, what would you say to someone who's just been diagnosed with FND?
I mean, I think we're actually at a very hopeful point in history for FND. And I think it's partially because of long COVID, because the symptoms can be very similar to FND. I ended up at a chronic fatigue chronic fatigue syndrome clinic and long COVID clinic that sort of work together. And so a lot of the symptoms can be very similar. Lots of NHS staff had or have long COVID. And for better or for worse, I think that it means that people are taking these sorts of things more, in quotes, seriously now, you know? And so things that can't be easily proven with scans and blood tests they're actually listening to patients a little bit more and listening to people's symptoms. And so now that means there's more funding, there's more research going into it. And so hopefully in the next, 5, 10, 20 years, hopefully we'll see some real changes in how people are treated and, treatment modalities, and see what's out there.
Yeah, I think in medicine and I don't know, psychiatry, psychology, everything, neurology, everything's advancing. And I think, especially at this point in, history, it's going at such a pace. I guess it's just holding out hope that there's going to be something. And I guess people can, I guess if they've first been diagnosed like you were when things were really, really tough, remembering that things will improve, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I've had a couple of people that have said to me, I'd never heard of it, but because you spoke about it sort of online and stuff, I knew what it was, and it gave me hope that maybe things would get better.
That's amazing, just making a bit of a difference to people.
You try your best, don't you?
Yeah, you do. I do. That's why I'm doing this podcast to help people. 100%. So what keeps you going on difficult days? So you're having a really sort of tough day and you're, because we all get down, don't we, about our conditions? I mean, even I try and be positive, but I don't know, I often might have a bad day or a bad week and I'm just like, oh my God, life's so hard, blah, blah, blah. But what keeps you going? What just keeps you getting up in the morning and pushing through?
Yeah, I mean, I think music for me is a really key thing. And also I'm very lucky to have some very strong support networks and, very supportive girlfriend and friends and my bands and my family, and it's a strange thing that I have a lovely life, even though it's been a very strange pathway to sort of get there. I've had this chance to do so much more music and video editing, music production, learning, new instruments and stuff, and, working here at college. I started volunteering here initially, and then, they took me on as a member of staff. So, I've had chances I wouldn't have otherwise had. And I do really love working here.
It's amazing. And it's funny you say that, because I think that with all my disabilities, so they're different. I think, life's really hard, but despite the fact that my life is extremely challenging, I have a great support network. I have so many amazing people around me.
That's really beautiful.
And opportunities that, as you say, wouldn't have had otherwise. So although things do seem bad, there's always something to find.
Yeah,
there's always some light. There's always something you can follow to, find your joy and find yourself again. And I think that's really, really powerful.
Yeah, definitely.
So is there anything else you'd like to share with listeners?
Well, I mean, I suppose I'll share the 2 websites that
Yes.
I was given.
Those 2 websites that were supposedly going to change your life.
Yeah, one of them was neurosymptoms.org, which does have a lot of very interesting information about FND. And there's also fndhope.org as well. So charity. I think it's a charity. I'm suddenly doubting myself. But either way, there's loads of information there.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it is a charity because I raised some money for it before. So that's definitely, 2 things, great resources for information.
Brilliant. And don't worry, everybody, I'm going to put these links in the description. So in the podcast description, you will find the links so you can, learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. But aside from that, I'll say, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Oh,
thank
Lou.
you. This episode has been fantastic.
Aww.
You have been incredible and shared so much that I know you're going to make a big difference to other people when they listen.
Thank you very much, Lou.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks everyone for listening. And I'll be back soon. I'm also going to put a link to my Facebook page in the description because I also share things on Facebook, my episodes, but also just resources and, my thoughts. So please go and follow me over there if you're on Facebook. But thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Gabi. And I'll be back soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.